Chapter 4, a 21-gun approach. There are 21 general concepts or constructs that guide the process of landscape compositing start to finish. In Landscapes Live 1 and 2, we'll be going into each of these steps in depth, but I want to give you an overview of what's ahead. Their order follows a typical workflow. It helps to subdivide them into 4 major groups: setup, asset development, unification, and output. Setup includes create and sync project folders, create collection sets, color settings, preferences and profiles, import and cull, and analyzations and notations. It's important to note that it is the complexity of a composite project that dictates how strictly one must adhere to these. Setup is largely about organization. Simple projects can slide by with very little attention paid to setup. The trade-off is that you sacrifice the ease with which you can relocate source materials months or even years later. The more of a digital paper trail you leave by way of organization, the simpler it is to return to a project's beginnings. More complex projects benefit from a solid setup routine by flowing smoothly during construction as well as after. Nothing limits flow like the distraction of searching for wayward components scattered all across multiple hard drives just as inspiration hits. Asset development. This is the heart and soul of compositing. It's here that we faithfully match the defining attributes of our asset to its backgrounds, or background to our assets. I've spent years researching and testing the best possible ways to accomplish each, and the search never ends as technology and skill sets press on into the future. We begin with the deal breakers, hoping to purge any unworthy candidates as early in the process as possible. No point wasting valuable time vetting an element that will only fail to measure up later. The earlier we spot the rejects, the better. Asset development, part 1. It's helpful to subdivide this group into its primary parts as well. Part 1 includes perspective and scale, camera raw pre-match, and checks and balances. Here we first create a rough silo mask, then match the perspective and scale and roughly place our asset within our composition, then match the luminosity, saturation, and hue of that asset to its new background. Asset development, part 2. Edging. Edging includes selections, masks, and custom brushes. This stage can be intimidating at first, but it quickly becomes a favorite part of any project. Selections, masks, and custom brushes are super fun. I've included a couple of actions that set things up and make them much more manageable for us mortals. Asset development part 3 includes highlights, shadows, and color reflections. It's at this point that our comps really start to feel right, and we can relax and play a bit, fine-tuning our asset placements to better emphasize esoteric concepts such as story. Asset development part 4 includes focus and noise. These last 2 constructs tighten things up nicely and prepare our comp for unification, where we will finalize the seamless blending of our component parts into a unified whole. Unification. Atmosphere, textures, and grain. Atmosphere adds depth and realism and even a bit of drama to our comp. Textures add mood and the opportunity to include subliminal hints such as shadows, tracks, and silhouettes. And grain coalesces all into a singular unified whole. Output. Optimize, color grade, master file, and deliverables. These are not parts of compositing per se, but the next logical steps to processing any image, whether a composite or not. I will explain my approach briefly, but chances are you have your own preferred workflow and personal look you will apply from here on. It might be hard at first to resist feeling disappointed when an asset doesn't instantly blend in, but they're not supposed to. Each step plays its part and eventually the magic happens. To borrow from life coach advice, learn to love the journey and the destination will take care of itself in a big, happy way. All right, let's dive in. First up, Chapter 5, Smart Objects, Camera Raw, and Camera Raw Filters.